Welcome back to another episode. For those that don't know me, hi, hello, my name is Karina. I am a nutrition student and an ex makeup artist. I am here to teach you anything and everything about the wellness world from the inside out. Today, we are working in a more metaphysical, spiritual, but also internal, emotional, and mental part of wellness. In particular, we are going to understand what is shadow work, what does it entail, and how does it work not only scientifically, but also emotionally in how we feel. So if you are ready to understand what does it mean and how it works, keep on watching. So, first of all, we need to understand why shadow work is important by understanding how we feel first. Normally, what tends to happen and why people get into shadow work is that the idea here of the shadow work is working with the subconscious knowledge that we have acquired throughout the years, whether it be through traumas or connections with other people or relationships that we had that left a lasting mark, or a situation or an issue that has created a lasting script in our head of how things should progress or how things should be. And the reality here is when we find ourselves doing things because of someone else or because of a situation that occurred before, that could actually become a subconscious issue that we integrate, that we don't even realize that it may be hindering or sabotaging the other things that we do in life because of those scripts. If I may, I want to give you a very particular example for me. I have dealt with issues associated with my father because of his divorce to my mother. So for the longest time, I had issues with men specifically where it caused me to see them in a toxic way or associate them with an issue. But the thing here is that it wasn't particularly strong when it just started, but it became stronger throughout my life. The reason for this is our brain has the capability of connecting information, and in specific negative information. The more negative feedback that you give to your brain about a particular thing, the stronger the belief gets. So for me, when then I got constantly harassed by men, or I went in public transportation, I was dealing with men looking me up and down, or when I went in out and about in the city in the dark, I was always scared of a man showing up. Basically, it created this idea that men are dangerous. It wasn't until I started to not only do shadow work, but also to heal the abandonment wound that I had from my father, that it caused me to understand that not all men are the same, and that I shouldn't just simply judge all of them the same. It is true that you should still have a level of safety, and you will forever be slightly scarred by any situation that actually was quite critical, but it shouldn't hinder you from continuing your life when someone else comes along and actually gives you the opposite situation that you have experienced. So for example, if your issue is associated with men, and you always had issues associated with men leaving you or cheating you or something like that, if all of a sudden you do find an actual good person, whether it be family, friend, or an actual relationship that proves you through his actions otherwise and shows up for you, the key here is believe what you see. If they are showing you exactly the opposite of what you have experienced, believe them. And when they tell you that they're not going to do it and they show it through action, that's exactly what it means. And this can be applied for any situation in life. I'm giving it specifically to men because that's one of my biggest experiences, but you could also do it when it comes to friends, when it comes to food, when it comes to your body. If you believe that you're too big or that your stretch marks are too ugly, and that is because someone told you they are, when someone tells you the opposite, it could either be received as one of two things, either as a shock to the system and you go into denial, or another shock to the system, but you actually go into a situation of confidence. One example of this was actually a friend of mine that I met through college. She always told me that she didn't want to show her legs because people told her that her legs were too long back in high school. But then funny enough, when I saw her for the first time, I literally told her, "You have the most beautiful long legs. You could be a model." And for a moment there, she actually got a little bit angry at me. And then when I pressed on and I was like, but why did you got angry at the fact that I told you that you have beautiful long legs? And then she told me, because for the longest time, I believed that I had ugly legs. And I told her, no, you have the exact type of legs that a modeling agency could be searching for, because you are tall, you are statuesque, and you have these beautiful long legs that you'd work very well in all kinds of photo shoots. So don't limit yourself by not going down that path unless you don't want to. But I can tell you right now, they might have hated you back then, but that's not the truth in other situations. And that is the same thing for many things in life. We will have people in our paths, and we'll also have situations in our paths that will create these scripts, these stories in our heads of what we should or shouldn't do, or what we should and shouldn't be, and also how we should see the world. And the idea of shadow work is to directly work on the issue from its source. It's not some woo-woo thing. It's basically you acknowledging the fact that you have that issue and trying to work through it. And you could do it in multiple ways. You could do it by literally asking yourself, talking about it, going to therapy, journaling, meditating. There's multiple ways you can do that. And yes, I like to call it shadow work because it goes beyond just typical therapy. It goes into understanding why that's happening and also understanding the triggers. Meanwhile, therapy can be also amazing, but it works specifically on changing the behaviors and modifying how you think. So by doing the combination of both, you are giving yourself the possibility of fully and completely changing your life. So next, I'm going to tell you the exact way that I do shadow work in case you want to do it by yourself at home. The key here is to understand how you should do it in a safe way so that it doesn't trigger you further, which is one of the main issues that I see occurring for people when they start this out. They go all in, all at once, and they find themselves more hurt than when they started us. So if you need, grab a pen and a paper and write these down so that you are able to do these the correct way. So the first thing that you need to do is to understand that you need to work at one thing at a time. You cannot just simply rip the band-aid off and go straight into it. You need to ease yourself into it because sometimes your biggest trigger is surrounded by multiple smaller triggers. So the key here is you starting off from the outside going in. So let's assume my issue with my father. That was my biggest issue. It was the abandonment wound that caused me to see men in a particular way. How do I go into that? I had to start first by understanding, what do I see men as? So I had to broaden it out. Instead of you going at the pinpoint, you are going in the broader spectrum. Why do I see men the way that I do? Why do I associate men with the way that I do? And that is the broader spectrum. Then we go a little bit further in. What did I see men do in my life, in my surroundings, in movies, in all kinds of things that caused me to think that way? So I went a little deeper and I went to the specifics of the things that I saw. And then once I realized what I've seen, I went to each individual thing and I was like, okay, what in my body did it trigger when I saw that thing? How did it make me feel? And identified the actual emotion. Because what happens is when we talk about emotions, we talk normally very broad. I am happy. I am angry. I am sad. When in reality, there's a spectrum of emotions. There are emotions that overlap together. You could feel happy and sad. You know, one of those, and we in Portuguese we have very much that word is called saudade. That word is hard to have a direct translation, but basically what it means is this inner young like this yearning, this wish of missing someone. It's like this feeling of missing someone that goes beyond just the feeling of missing, is this yearning for something. And it's really difficult to explain because it is difficult to explain. And the key here is clearly identifying that feeling. One of the cool things that I have seen is this wheel. If I have an image, I'll pop it up right here. But basically is an image that has the generalized sensation. So like the happy, angry, whatever. And then it goes out by combining all the feelings and all of the other feelings. And then what you can do is literally just Google search the term and see, okay, I'm feeling like I've been abandoned. So what is the feeling of abandonment? How does it feel? What does it mean exactly? Or I'm feeling frustrated. What does frustration mean? I feel, okay, what is the name for feeling happy tears? Then you're going to search what is that term? Because by naming the emotion, you are more capable of understanding it and being able to decipher it and being able to go deeper into your issue. So then, for example, for me, after I understood the emotion that I was feeling, it meant that I was feeling abandoned. I was feeling alone. I was feeling unheard. Okay, so why am I feeling unheard? Okay, I'm feeling unheard because when my father left, I felt like this whole situation of their divorce was so much about them and so much about their issue that I felt neglected directly because I was just a child and I couldn't understand it. And then I had to decipher it myself as I got older because no one took the time to explain to me what's going on. And by the time that I did understand, I had already created a script in my head of what it might have been. And that is the core issue. And I had to keep working. And you do multiple questions. You do so many questions like of you could do prompts like, what would I never want people to know about me? What am I afraid that people will discover? What is my biggest fear associated to X issue or X problem? Because sometimes when we are working on healing ourselves, one of the biggest issues is other people's opinions more than our own personal opinions. And one of the main things that you need to understand is that you need to practice self-compassion while you're doing this. Is understanding that the pain that you're going to feel, it is a very real, very tangible pain. And the main issue here is when you find yourself, instead of embracing yourself, instead of having self-compassion, self-love for that wound, if you instead start to judge it, you're moving away from the whole point of the shadow work, which is healing it. Because if you start judging it and start being like, oh, you shouldn't have that wound, that is a complete mess and you should just not do shadow work if that is the case. Because the moment that you just cross your arms and you start judging your pain instead of accepting it and giving it the space that it needs to heal, you are just completely walking backwards. So you need to start by understanding the generalized and work inwards. Do as many questions as you feel necessary to understand it. If that means that you need to journal, if that means that you need to talk to yourself, if that means that you got to do a voice note, for example, that for me is the best thing, is literally like putting the voice note and just talking. I feel like I'm talking to a friend almost. I just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And something that you can do is basically after you do that, you could grab the transcript. I know people that stick it on ChatGPT and say, identify the top 10 wounds that you find throughout this transcript, like inner wounds. And sometimes that can actually help you, because I'm not against AI. You just need to use it in your advantage and you need to use it for a reason. You're not going to just simply be like, do me questions. Like the issue with the whole do me questions is that he's going to just spill out generalized questions. What you need to do is to truly talk about how you feel, what's going on, how you feel in your gut, so that then by grabbing the transcript and plopping it and requesting it to find your top 10 wounds, not asking you to fix it, but identifying them, is going to facilitate you in comprehending what it might be going on. Because just because we are into spirituality and wellness and feeling good does not mean that we cannot advance somewhat and find ourselves enjoying a little bit of a speed up through our little friend AI, because using it correctly can help you very, very easily recognize certain things. So now that you have all the tips and all the things in your hands, It is time for me to go because that's how I am. I like to dump the information and then say goodbye. That's just the way that I am. So, without further ado, if you need any further tips or you find yourself in any sort of issue, whether it be something that you want to share or not, if you wish to share, you can leave on the comment section below. If you do not wish to share and you rather only speak to me directly, my DMs are open and you can go ahead and DM me directly. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd love to see more from me, you can go ahead and stick around, and you can either subscribe or follow depending which platform you are in. I am on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. So I will see you in the next episode. Stay safe. Bye bye.